Human beings are much like the diverse vegetation that covers all corners of this earth, from the plains in the west to the deserts of the Serengeti. From Siberia to the equator, plants will find a way to thrive. There are factors that decide if a plant is deemed an invasive species or an endangered one. Whether the sprouts take root for generations and plants follow or wither away before the start of the new season, there's an ancient pattern that each plant must strictly adhere to if it's to continue the survival of its species. The individual unit stemming from a previous generation that was picked up and dropped off in a huge field of other seeds. Sprouting along like the rest of them, our little seed is now the diverse earth that will shape its journey to full-fledged adulthood. Like seeds, humans also stem from older generations brought into this life to precede those who came before them and usher in a generation that will come to follow. The types of seeds we become, we don't get to choose, but the journey we make, the sprouting we do, will define our environment in ways long after our lifespan. This Magolda, for example, must overcome insurmountable odds in order to become like the Magoldas before it. The most defining moment in this Magolda's journey happens right here, in Mother Earth. See, this seed requires a fine balance of nutrients and vitamins. Some come from the sun, if Magolda can withstand its heat, and others come from the soil that surrounds the roots. More from the water that comes from the habitat or lack thereof in dry or arid climates. Sometimes animals or insects provide the Magolda the energy needed to break dirt and make gains. But things like insecticides or oil spills can decide if a Magolda prospers or plumes. There are things in the environment that decide the way Magolda will grow. Magolda will look to become like those that surround it, growing along paths that support. If an obstacle obstructs Magolda, say a river bank or a heavily trafficked sidewalk, Magolda will slowly grow in the opposite direction, because it learns that for survival, it must be impossible to thrive on sidewalks. It's not enough for some plants to be told, hey, you shouldn't grow here, because some plants don't give a fuck, and no amount of weeding them will make this land any less theirs and more yours. So plants adapt. They evolve in ways that allow for different consumption of energy. Some know from a young age to say, stay away from me, and they make a home for themselves to protect them from the perils around them. Some plants not only thrive in dark and difficult climates, but they prefer it for the safety and comfort it provides them. And others turn to a symbiotic relationship with other plants. The Three Sisters, for example, comes from a native practice of planting beans, squash, and corn together to promote a biodiversity of existence, enhancing the survival of the individual by growing alongside the many. Like plants, human beings develop differently depending on their environment and the biodiversity that surrounds them. Some plants, like orchids, require unique and tailored ways of care and feeding. Too much water for them can easily cause root rot. The coral reefs, however, couldn't survive without the richness of the body of water they grow in. Vines require scaffolding with rigid surfaces to cling to, and often suffocate their fellow vegetation if not closely monitored. All in all, how a plant does depends on the climate it's acclimated to, and if the climate wants it to grow there. In a 2018 study conducted by the furniture conglomerate IKEA, an experiment was done where two groups of plants were given a series of insults and compliments. The study discovered that the plants receiving the insults withered at a faster rate, while their positive counterparts remained healthy. Like our old friend Magolda, what the environment expected from the plant determined its ability to thrive. There are different components to how a plant grows, from the DNA to the environment. Does it have a caretaker, or did it fend for itself? There can be a million reasons that shape what a plant can become, but what happens after a plant thrives? Thriving looks different for every plant. Some wish to be alone, while others are squishy and weaved together. But every thriving plant has one thing in common. It adds to the betterment of Earth. Plants absorb gaseous pollutants like ozone, nitrogen oxide, and sulfur dioxides through their leaves when taking up carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. However, plants also collect dust, ash, pollen, and other particulate matter that reduce the pollutants in the air and oceans. Trees, for example, reduce the amount of stormwater running off, which reduces erosion and pollution in our waterways, and may reduce the effects of flooding. Many species of wildlife depend on trees for habitat. Trees provide food, protection, and homes for many birds and animals. Trees create the oxygen that every living being needs. Sprouting one seed into a tree can impact the world beyond its own existence, just like humanity. Raising students up means setting up humanity to fight for its own oxides and dioxides. Helping students thrive results in better infrastructure, ridding life of disease through scientific discovery and educational advancement. When students develop to be the best freaking plants they can be, everyone eats the fruits that they bear. The consequences to humanity are devastating if we don't foster positive growth in our youth. That starts by checking the soil, providing the sun and the water and the warmth that the plants need. The care and even compliments we give to our garden will lead humanity to long-term sustainability in the future. And that, to me, is what student development theory is all about.